my channel, guys. I've had a ton of people ask me about how to prepare for teacher interviews. So today's video is going to be all about my personal experiences interviewing, and I'm going to give you my best tips for preparing for your next teacher interview. I thought it would make the most sense if I started by talking about my personal experiences with interviewing. So my first real experience with it was attending an educational job fair that was held by my school. Basically, they had representatives from different counties across the state and nearby states, and we were able to go around, talk to them, and hand out copies of our resume. So it really was my first chance to start to prepare for my upcoming interviews because I was able to talk with the people and figure out what they were looking for in potential hires. So I basically brought a bunch of copies of my resume with me and handed them out to counties that I was interested in. I will be honest and say that nothing really came of the job fair. However, I did end up speaking with a man who was in charge of the math department in the county I currently am teaching in. At the time, I didn't know if I was going to teach at the elementary level or if I was going to teach at the middle school level for math since I did minor in math. The more I talked to him, he was interested in interviewing me. So I basically got an on-the-spot interview. It was scheduled for about an hour after the job fair ended. I had to quickly go home, grab my portfolio, and come back. However, I will say that I was completely intimidated and completely out of my league because even though I knew the math concepts, I did not know anything about actually teaching math at a middle school level because I had only interned in elementary school. So it definitely did not amount to anything whatsoever, but it was my first chance to really interview, get some of those nerves out, and know what to expect in terms of questions. Then about 2 weeks later after the job fair, still before I had graduated, I ended up meeting with an administrator at a local private school because she was the aunt of another girl that I had interned with. So she kind of got me hooked up with her. I met with her. She was really interested in hiring me and I was supposed to go back and meet with her again, but I ended up canceling that second meeting because when I left the first one, in my heart, I just knew that I did not want to teach at a private school. Nothing against private schools, but I grew up going to public schools and I just knew that that's where I wanted to be ultimately. Plus, the position was for pre-K, which I really was not thrilled about. Fast forward to about 2 weeks after graduation, I ended up getting an interview at the first school that I interned at. It was for a 5th grade position, and my mentor teacher was still teaching there, and she ended up recommending me, so I got an interview. However, I went into the interview knowing that there was almost a 100% chance I wasn't getting the job because other teachers were trying to transfer into that school, and they are always given first priority. I'm going to highly suggest to you that your first interview is not at a school that you have your heart set on teaching at because you are never going to be as prepared for your first interview as you will be for any interview after that. Your first interview is really just to get your nerves out. So I suggest scheduling an interview at a school that you would obviously be okay with teaching at if you did get offered the job, but it's not your first choice because chances are that interview is not going to be super successful just because you're nervous and you don't really know what to expect. Honestly, I did not do well at that interview at all. Even though I had prepared and practiced answers to questions, I did not know that there were going to be so many people on the interview panel. I was expecting it just to be like 1 or 2 people, and it ended up being an entire table of people. Super intimidating, and I got super nervous. Did not answer questions well at all. I will tell you from my experiences, I have never sat on an interview panel with less than 5 people. Normally, it's always the principal, vice principal, any team teachers for the grade level that you're interviewing for, and then any other personnel that they feel is necessary. So then fast forward to another week or 2 after that, I ended up getting a call from a principal at an elementary school in the county I'm currently teaching in. I had actually taught her son during my second internship, and she was really good friends with my second mentor teacher. So she had recommended me to that principal. I ended up getting an interview. From my experience, when you leave an interview, you can almost always tell if you're gonna get the job or not, just based on the vibes you got from the interview panel and your gut instinct. I left knowing there was no way I was getting that job because the questions that I was asked, I had not been prepared for. They were very specific questions to their curriculum. I was not ready at all. I did not give good answers. So I left knowing that it was not going to work out, and sure enough, a couple days later, I got a call saying they were not going to hire me. Fast forward to another 2 weeks after that, I ended up getting a call from that same principal again. She had another position open up and she wanted to interview me again. So in the back of my mind, I felt at least a little bit better because I must not have done as bad at the first interview as I thought I did if they were willing to interview me again. I went into this interview, and when I left, I felt more confident in my answers, but I still didn't feel like I had done the best of my ability. I ended up getting a call a couple of days later. They had said that I was definitely in the running. They wanted to hire me, but they ended up finding a girl that was bilingual, and they had a high population of ELL students. So it did not work out. And in hindsight, I'm glad that it didn't work out because I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. And I did not get upset over not getting hired because in the back of my mind, I knew there was something better in store for me. And I definitely think that you end up where you're supposed to be. And in hindsight, I 100% think that's true. However, that principal ended up recommending me to the principal at the school that I'm currently teaching at. So I ended up getting a call at the end of July, and I interviewed on July 31st. And thank goodness, because I was starting to panic that I wasn't going to get hired. So I mentioned this in my portfolio video, but I'll just reiterate it. I left that interview feeling extremely confident. I knew that I had done a good job answering the questions, and again, I truly believe that you know when you leave the interview if you did well or not. So I was walking out to my car, and ironically, as soon as I got in my car, I was about to call my mom and tell her, like, I think I got the job. But before I could get there, one of the teachers from the interview panel came running out, calling my name, and they had me come back in. So they sat me back down, and the principal basically told me he wanted to hire me, but they had one more interview scheduled. So he had me wait in his office. And I'm not gonna lie, I was sweating so bad because I was super nervous. And I ended up calling my mom while I was waiting, and I was like whispering on the phone. I was like, Mom, I think I'm gonna get the job. And I went back in afterwards. They did offer me the job, and of course I accepted it right away. And what was really cool is that they actually took me to go and see my classroom, which was such a surreal moment because that was a moment I had dreamed of since I was a little kid. So as it got closer to the start of the school year, all of the new teachers attend a breakfast with the administrators. So I went to breakfast with the principal that had hired me, and during the breakfast, he actually told me that I had one of the best interviews he's ever done, and he said what really set me apart was my portfolio and my knowledge on Common Core. I will say that I do think that the questions I was asked allowed me to really shine during that interview. There will be interviews that have really difficult and really obscure questions that you struggle to answer, and then there will be interviews that have what seem to be easy questions that you just know really well. So it really can be luck of the draw, but again, I really think that everything happens for a reason. Now, obviously, you cannot control the questions that you get asked. However, preparing for your interview and knowing what to expect ahead of time can greatly increase your chances of actually getting hired. Now I'm going to talk about tips for interviewing. So I'm going to talk about how to prepare, what to wear, what to bring, what to do after, and then I'm going to give you some other random tips at the end. First, I'm going to talk about how to prepare before your interview. First, you need to create a detailed portfolio. If you have not already seen my Creating Your Teaching Portfolio video, I outline everything that I keep in there and I give you my best tips for creating your own. Next, you need to prepare answers to common interview questions. Personally, when I'm preparing for interviews, I make a Word document of these questions and I just bullet out my answers under each one. Now, you can Google and find tons of lists of common interview questions for teachers. However, I am going to put a personal list of questions that I've come across a lot in the description box for you if you want to use those to prepare. I'm not going to tell you how to actually answer the questions because your answers do need to be genuine and they do need to reflect your personal teaching style. I also recommend preparing something to leave behind with the interview panel. Now, a lot of teachers have created brochures and foldables. Honestly, there's tons of really creative ideas out there. Personally, I like to keep things really simple. So guys, I just take a black plastic folder and in page protectors on the inside, I have a copy of my cover letter, my resume, letters of recommendation, and then a sample lesson plan that really reflects my personal style of teaching. I personally hand it to whoever's in charge of the interview as soon as I walk into the room. That way they can look through it while I'm talking and they have it to hold on to remember me by after I leave. Next, I'm going to talk about what to wear for your interview. You need to dress to impress, which obviously means different things to different people, but you should definitely be more dressed up than you would be just for teaching. For girls, that probably means a skirt or slacks with a nice blouse. For guys, that probably means a button-down shirt with a tie or maybe even a suit. Ironically, when I got the call from the principal at the school I'm currently teaching at, he told me to dress casually because it was the summer, and honestly, once I got to know him better, I completely understand that because he is a more casual person. However, I still chose to wear a blazer, a nice blouse, and slacks because I personally believe in look good, feel good, and I know that when I wear a blazer, I feel a lot more confident and a lot more powerful. Now, there is a part of me that believes that I would not have gotten the job if I had dressed more casually, which may or may not be true. However, it is very important to present yourself professionally during an interview, both through the clothes that you choose to wear and through your mannerisms. Also, this is really small, but it's something that a professor told me during my undergraduate, and it has always stuck with me. She recommended wearing something with a small pop of red during your interview. So for girls, that could be done through your jewelry, like a necklace or a bracelet. For guys, it could be done through your tie. But apparently there are studies that show that wearing red helps the interview panel to remember you. So personally, I wore a watch that had a red strap during my interview. Now I'm going to talk about what to bring with you for your interview. Obviously, you need to bring with you your teaching portfolio and any folders or brochures that you plan to leave behind. I also recommend bringing a notebook and a pen. Personally, in my notebook, I have already prepared ahead of time some sample questions and answers just in case I get stuck during the interview. I also usually bullet out some information about the school because if you are interviewing at a lot of different schools, you don't want to get them confused. I personally keep my notebook opened up in front of me, and I definitely look down at it during the interview. I have never had anyone from an interview panel tell me that that was a negative thing. In fact, it shows them that you came prepared. So this is the tablet notebook type thing, I don't know what to call it, that I used at my interviews, and I'm probably still going to use it for my interviews coming up. I originally got it at Staples, but I don't remember how much it was. However, I really like it because it has this leather cover and it looks very professional. So on the inside, over here, there is a pocket, and I always kept extra copies of my resume in case someone else on the interview panel wanted to keep one. However, I obviously need to get rid of these because they are my old resume. I need to update it with my new one. This side was a tablet of paper. This is where I jotted down notes about the school, about questions that I had, or answers to questions that I knew I was going to struggle with. But in the notebook, I usually listed information about the school, especially their mission statement, because I always like to reference that during the interview if I can. I kept a list of questions that I wanted to ask at the end, information on lessons that have gone well, because I always seem to space on that when they suddenly ask me, like my mind goes blank, along with lessons that didn't go well, plus any educational books or research that I've stayed current on. You may also want to bring a bottle of water if you are anything like me. I get super nervous during interviews, and when I get super nervous, my mouth gets super dry. So now let's talk about what to do after your interview. As soon as you get to the car when the interview is over, I recommend writing down as many of the questions that they asked as you can remember so that you can use those to help you prepare for your next interview. Especially if there were any questions that you were not sure how to answer, make sure that you take the time to prepare an answer in case it comes up again. You also are going to write a thank you note. So either go back out to your car, write it, take it back in, and leave it with the secretary that day. Or if you're actually going to mail it, I recommend getting it in the mail that same day, because even if that principal does not hire you, they may recommend you to another principal at another school. Now, I personally have never had to call a school to check on the hiring process because I've always gotten a call within a couple days. However, during the interview, if they have not told you when you will be able to hear back by, make sure you ask. And if you don't hear back within that amount of time, don't be afraid to call them and see if they have any information, because it definitely shows them that you are interested in the job. Finally, I'm just gonna give you guys a couple of other tips that I have. I know I said this in my portfolio video, but I wanted to reiterate. Make sure that you open up your portfolio and use it to answer questions, because a lot of times they're not gonna ask to see it. After my interview, my principal actually told me I was one of the few people that actually used my portfolio to answer questions. Most teachers just sat there with it closed in front of them. Next, make sure that you don't speak negatively of your past job or any experiences that you've had, because they don't want to hire someone that is going to speak negatively about them. Instead, use any negative experiences to talk about how you have grown as an educator. Also, at every interview I have ever done, at the very end, they always ask if you have any questions for them. I recommend having questions prepared ahead of time, because often it can be very difficult to think of them on the spot, and you don't want to say, no, I don't have any questions, because you want to appear eager and interested in the job. My go-to questions have always been, what are you most proud of for your school, and what are the biggest challenges facing your school? But if you are a brand new teacher, you may also want to ask if they have a first-year mentoring program for new teachers. Like I said before, you may also want to ask when you can expect to hear back from them if they haven't already told you. Next, if you get asked a question that you have literally zero idea how to answer, I recommend asking if you can come back to that question at the end, because chances are they're not going to remember to ask it to you again, and then you're able to get out of answering the question. Also, to go along with that, it is okay to ask the panel to repeat a question or to clarify clarify a question if you didn't understand it. Don't feel like you have to start answering the second the question is asked. It's okay to take a few seconds to gather your thoughts. Last but not least, be confident in who you are as a teacher and just be yourself. I know that personally, I am the type of person that likes to make people laugh, especially if there's a lot of tension in the room, like there happens to be at interviews. I know at the beginning of my interview, I said something funny. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember the entire panel laughing, and it suddenly made me feel a lot better. I hope that you found these tips helpful and that they bring you success at your future interviews. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up because it really helps me out. If you have any further questions, leave them down in the comments. I will do my best to answer them. I will catch you guys in my next weekly vlog, which goes live every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. And until then, happy teaching. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end and for supporting my YouTube channel. I appreciate it more than you guys realize. If you want to check out any of my older videos, you can use the 2 links right down here. And if you want to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future videos, you can use the link right over here. In the description is the link to all of my social media sites, my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and my Amazon store. And I will catch you guys in my next video.